God never fails. Stop worrying and leave it to God. Today I want to remind you of a simple yet powerful truth. God never fails. No matter what situation you're facing, no matter how big the mountain in front of you looks, God is still in control. The problem is, many of us worry too much, trying to carry burdens that were never meant for us to bear. We struggle, stress, and overthink, while God is saying, leave it to me. My friend, God has never failed before, and He will not start now. The situation you are stressing about, God already has the solution. The battle you are fighting, God has already won it. So stop worrying and leave it in His hands. Trust Him, rest in Him, and watch Him do what only He can do. Worry is one of the greatest enemies of faith. It creeps into the mind, takes over our thoughts, and begins to choke the very foundation of our trust in God. Many people live in a constant state of anxiety, allowing fear and doubt to dictate their emotions and decisions. Yet the Bible reminds us over and over again that worry is unnecessary and unproductive. It does not change our circumstances, nor does it improve our situation. Instead, it robs us of peace, drains our energy, and keeps us focused on the problem rather than the God who holds the solution. Faith, on the other hand, is about complete trust in God. It is the ability to believe that no matter what is happening around us, God is in control. Faith is what pleases God, and worry is what weakens our faith. When we worry, we shift our focus from God's power to our own limitations. Instead of resting in His promises, we start relying on our own strength, which only leads to more stress and frustration. Worry causes us to live in a cycle of fear, making it difficult to hear God's voice or recognize His guidance. One of the reasons worry is so dangerous is that it magnifies our problems while minimizing God's power. When we dwell on our concerns, we give them more weight than they deserve. We begin to think about all the possible negative outcomes, imagining scenarios that may never even happen. This mental battle takes away our ability to trust that God is working things out for our good. The enemy uses worry as a weapon to keep us in a state of doubt because he knows that a fearful believer is a powerless believer. As long as we are consumed with anxiety, we cannot operate in the boldness that faith brings. Jesus addressed the issue of worry in Matthew 6:25-34, where He told His followers not to worry about their lives, what they would eat, drink, or wear. He pointed to the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, reminding them that if God takes care of such small things, how much more will He take care of His children? This passage is a powerful reminder that worry is unnecessary because God already knows our needs. He is not caught off guard by our struggles, and He has already made provisions for us before we even realize there is a need. Worry also affects our ability to pray effectively. When we pray with a heart full of anxiety, our prayers are often filled with doubt rather than faith. Instead of confidently declaring God's promises, we approach Him with uncertainty, wondering if He will really come through for us. But the Bible tells us in Philippians 4:6-7 to be anxious for nothing, but in everything, through prayer and supplication, make our requests known to God, and His peace will guard our hearts and minds. This means that true prayer is not just about asking, it is about surrendering our worries to God and trusting that He will take care of them. Worry steals our joy and makes us ineffective in our purpose. It is impossible to live a fulfilled and fruitful life when our minds are constantly troubled. Instead of focusing on God's assignment for our lives, we become preoccupied with things that He has already promised to handle. Many people miss out on great opportunities because they are too worried about things they cannot control. They hesitate, doubt, and overanalyze every situation instead of stepping out in faith. But when we choose faith over worry, we begin to see doors open, miracles happen, and breakthroughs take place. God never intended for his children to live under the burden of anxiety. He calls us to a life of faith, rest, and trust. Every time worry tries to creep into our hearts, we must remind ourselves of who our God is. He is the same God who parted the Red Sea, provided manna in the wilderness, shut the mouths of lions, and raised the dead. If he did it before, he can do it again. Our job is not to figure out every detail of our future. Our job is to trust in the one who holds the future. Worry may be a natural response, but faith is a supernatural solution. The more we choose faith over fear, the more we will experience the peace and power of God in our lives. God has never failed and he never will. This is an eternal truth that stands firm despite the circumstances we may face. Throughout history, from the beginning of time until now, God has proven himself faithful over and over again. His word is filled with testimonies of his unwavering commitment to his people. No matter how impossible a situation may seem, no matter how great the challenge, God always comes through. He does not operate on human limitations, nor is he bound by time or circumstances. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and his power never diminishes. When we look at the stories of the Bible, we see countless examples of God's faithfulness. Abraham was promised a son in his old age, and despite every natural reason to doubt, God fulfilled his promise. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison, yet God was working behind the scenes to elevate him to the highest position in Egypt. The Israelites stood before the Red Sea with an army behind them and nowhere to go, but God made a way where there was no way. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, yet he was not harmed because God shut the mouths of the lions. These are not just stories, they are evidence that God has never failed. Even when things look uncertain, God remains constant. People may change, situations may shift, and life may throw unexpected challenges at us, but God remains the same. He does not make mistakes, and he does not abandon his children. The world is full of disappointments. Friends fail, systems collapse, and even our own plans often fall apart. But God's promises are secure. What he has spoken will come to pass, because his word does not return void. He is not like man that he should lie or go back on his word. If he said it, he will do it. If he has promised it, it will come to pass. Many times, we judge God's faithfulness based on our own timing. When things don't happen as quickly as we expect, we start to wonder if God will come through. But God's delays are not denials. He works in perfect timing, and what looks like a delay to us is often preparation for something greater. We may not always understand his ways, but we can always trust his heart. Just as a seed is planted and takes time to grow, God's plans for our lives are unfolding in ways we may not see. Our responsibility is to trust him, even when we don't understand, because he is always working for our good. The greatest proof of God's faithfulness is found in Jesus Christ. God sent his son to die for the sins of the world, and through his resurrection, he conquered death, proving that nothing is impossible for him. If God did not fail to provide salvation for humanity, why would he fail in any other area of our lives? His love is too great to leave us where we are. His power is too mighty to let us fall without lifting us up. His wisdom is too perfect to allow us to walk alone without his guidance. Every believer can testify to moments where God made a way when there seemed to be none. He has healed, restored, provided, protected, and guided us through seasons that we never thought we would survive. When we look back, we realize that even in the hardest times, God was there. He was working sustaining, and strengthening us. Just because we face difficulties does not mean that God has failed. It simply means that He is preparing us for something greater. His plans are higher than ours, and His ways are beyond our understanding. The enemy will always try to make us doubt God's faithfulness. He will whisper lies that make us question whether God sees or cares. But the truth remains unshaken. God has never failed, and He never will. His power is limitless. His promises are unbreakable, and His love is eternal. No matter what we face, we can stand firm in the confidence that God will always come through. His track record is perfect, and He will not start failing now. Your job is to trust. God's job is to work. This is one of the most powerful principles of faith that every believer must understand. Too often people carry burdens that were never meant for them. They try to fix everything, solve every problem, and control every outcome, only to find themselves exhausted, frustrated, and overwhelmed. But the truth is, God never intended for us to live this way. He calls us to trust Him, to release our worries, and to allow Him to work in ways that we cannot. The moment we surrender control and truly trust God is the moment we begin to see His power move in our lives. Trusting God means letting go of our need to understand everything. Human nature wants answers, explanations, and guarantees. We want to see the full picture before we take a step of faith. But God operates differently. He often gives us only one step at a time, requiring us to walk in faith rather than sight. The more we try to figure things out on our own, the more we delay His work in our lives. Trust means believing that even when we cannot see what God is doing, He is still working behind the scenes. It means knowing that He is faithful to His promises, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. God's job is to work, to provide, to guide, and to bring His plans to fulfillment. He does not need our help to make things happen. He does not require our worry, our overthinking, or our constant striving. He simply asks for our trust. When we fully place our faith in Him, we enter into His rest. Rest does not mean inactivity. It means confidence in God's ability to handle what we cannot. When we trust Him, we stop carrying unnecessary burdens and start experiencing His peace. Many people struggle with trust because they have been let down by others. They have experienced betrayal, disappointment, and failure. They have seen promises broken and expectations shattered. But God is not like people. He does not lie, change His mind, or fail to keep His word. His faithfulness is absolute and His love is unfailing. When we trust Him, we are not placing our confidence in human ability, but in divine sovereignty. He knows the end from the beginning. He sees what we cannot see and understands what we do not understand. Sometimes the greatest obstacle to trusting God is our own impatience. We want things to happen on our timeline, and when they don't, we assume that God is not working. But God is never in a hurry. He works according to His perfect timing, and His delays are often for our protection and preparation. What may seem like a delay is actually God aligning things in the best way possible. If we rush ahead of Him, we risk stepping outside of His perfect will. But when we wait on Him and trust His timing, we see Him move in ways beyond our imagination. Trusting God does not mean that life will always be easy or that we will never face challenges. It means that no matter what happens, we believe that God is in control. It means that even when things don't go as planned, we know He is still working for our good. It means that instead of trying to force outcomes, we rest in the assurance that His ways are higher than ours. Faith is not just about believing in God's existence. It is about relying on His character. It is about knowing that He is a provider, a healer, a waymaker, and a promise keeper. It is about living in the reality that He is always at work, even when we do not see it. Our job is to trust, to walk in faith, to surrender our worries, and to let God do what only He can do. When we do this, we will experience the fullness of His power, peace, and purpose in our lives. Leave it to God and walk in peace. Life is filled with uncertainties, challenges, and trials that often leave us feeling anxious and burdened. Many people carry heavy loads, trying to solve every problem, control every situation, and predict every outcome. The weight of worry steals joy, drains energy, and robs the soul of the peace that God has promised. But true peace is not found in having all the answers or fixing everything ourselves. It is found in surrender, letting go, and allowing God to take full control. God never intended for His children to live under the stress of trying to manage everything on their own. He calls us to trust Him, to release our worries into His hands, and to walk in the peace that comes from knowing He is in control. When we refuse to surrender, we place ourselves in a position of unnecessary struggle. We were not created to handle everything, nor do we have the wisdom or power to do so. God alone knows the future, sees the bigger picture, and has the ability to work things out in ways we cannot imagine. Trusting God requires faith. It means choosing to believe that even when things do not make sense, He is still working for our good. It is easy to have peace when everything is going well, but real faith is tested in moments of uncertainty. The true challenge is to trust God when doors seem closed, when prayers are unanswered, and when the path forward is unclear. But the beauty of surrendering to God is that His peace is not based on circumstances. It is a supernatural peace that exists even in the middle of the storm. Many people struggle to find peace because they try to control what is beyond their power. They hold on to their problems, analyzing every detail, trying to force solutions, and exhausting themselves in the process. But peace is found in releasing, not in striving. The more we try to handle everything, the more anxious we become. But when we lay our burdens at God's feet and trust Him completely, we step into a place of divine rest. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That rest is found in surrender, in releasing the weight of worry and allowing God to take over. Walking in peace does not mean that everything will always go the way we expect. It does not mean we will never face trials or difficulties. But it does mean that no matter what happens, we can remain calm, knowing that God is in control. His ways are higher, His plans are greater, and His timing is perfect. When we truly leave things in His hands, we no longer carry the burden of trying to figure everything out. We trust that He knows what He is doing, and we rest in the assurance that He is working behind the scenes. Peace is not something that can be achieved through effort. It is something that is received through trust. It is a gift from God that comes when we fully surrender to Him. It is a deep, unshakable confidence that He is in control, that He is faithful, and that He will never fail. When we leave our worries with Him, we free ourselves from unnecessary stress and step into the abundant life He has promised. God's peace is available to everyone, but it requires a choice. It requires choosing to let go of fear, choosing to trust His plan, and choosing to believe that He is working all things together for good. The more we surrender, the more peace we experience. When we truly leave it to God, we no longer live in fear or anxiety. We walk in confidence, in faith, and in the unshakable peace that only He can provide. So today I urge you, stop worrying and leave it to God. He has never failed, and He never will. The same God who parted the Red Sea, shut the mouths of lions, and raised the dead is the same God who watches over you. Your problems are not too big for Him. Your situation is not beyond His control. Worry changes nothing, but faith changes everything. Let go of the fear, release the anxiety, and rest in his promises. He's working behind the scenes, making a way where there seems to be none. Trust him completely. Walk in peace and know that he will never fail you. Your job is to believe. His job is to move. And when God moves, miracles happen. Stay in faith, because the best is yet to come.